What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of No Crosstalk. My name is Pip.
My name is Laura.
My name is Phil.
And Phil's joining us today. He's a good friend that we have in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Laura and I just got back from a speaking commitment about an hour north of here at a rehab center. Happy Friday, guys. The last couple weeks have been daunting, to say the very least. They've been a tough couple weeks. Sorry we missed you guys last week. A couple people were away, couldn't make it work, but we're back at it this week. But happy Friday. We hope you had a wonderful week, and we hope that you have an even better weekend. This week, we have a couple topics on hand that are, I guess, controversial in the recovery community. But overall, I think you will find the same conclusion that we've all came to. First off, I'd like to plug again my good friend Jerry Allen. He's a good friend of mine. He runs a group for God Life Ministries, Celebrate Recovery. He has meetings in our local area in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, at the Hope Center at 429 East Broad Street in Bethlehem. This program is not a 12-step program. It is heavily spiritual, and it works for a lot of people, and I highly encourage people to reach out to him. He encourages people to text him on his cell phone. His number is 484-602-6113. He's a really great guy, and every morning when I get up, go to the gym, I receive a text message from him with his daily devotional. It's very uplifting, and it's always nice to know that somebody's thinking about you first thing in the morning. I always respond to him first thing in the morning, tell him thank you for thinking of me. Gives me something to pray on and think about throughout my day, each and every day. So again, his name is Jerry Allen. The program is called Celebrate Recovery. His meetings are 6 to 7 o'clock on Monday nights at the Hope Center at 429 East Broad Street in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So first and foremost, I would like to introduce again our good friend Phil. And I would like Phil to introduce himself and just give us a little backstory about yourself, man.
My name is Phil, and I'm probably an alcoholic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Introduce myself. This is not my first time around. I've been sober a little bit over about 3.5 years. And it's the best show in town. I mean, I got one kid, another one on the way. The road to kids and marriage and life in general has been bumpy, and I definitely wouldn't be able to do it without the rooms of AA and everything that goes along with it. It was an ugly road, man, just like everybody else's, but I don't know, man. There's not much else to say. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that the guy that texts you every morning. I have this guy that when I first got sober, it was the beginning of COVID, like beginning. I met him on an online meeting, and he's been texting me every single morning for 3.5 years. Yeah. I don't know the guy's name. I don't know where he came from. I don't know anything about him. But I know that if he doesn't text me, I'm like, hey, you okay?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you don't even have his numbers or his name saved in
I
your
don't
phone?
have his name saved. I don't have anything. It's just the same weird 215 number that texts me every morning.
That's great,
yeah,
man.
Anyway, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. Awesome. And you know what's crazy is that, like, you were one of the very first people that I met in the rooms when I came in straight out of rehab. So the fact that we're still friends and now we get to do this together is amazing, dude.
Yeah,
I'm very happy to have you here.
Thanks, man.
So that being said, we're gonna start talking about our topic this week. We thought that it would be interesting to discuss alcoholism versus drug addiction. I know that a lot of people in early recovery, I know Laura can speak to this, believe that there is a difference. I know that for a long time in my early 20s, I believed that I struggled with heroin. Alcohol wasn't my thing. And then when I started drinking again, after I got clean the first time, it took a while, but eventually that led me right back to drugs. It led me right back down the rabbit hole. So I will start off by saying that I learned at the very first rehab center that I was at. I was struggling. I was struggling really hard because it was my first stint in rehab. I was still dealing with some of the post-acute withdrawal symptoms. and I was lost. I didn't know what my future looked like or anything. And one night I was having dinner, and one of the techs came up to me, and she's like, "You're really struggling right now." I'm like, "Yeah, because I don't know why I'm feeling or thinking the way that I'm feeling or thinking." And she says, "Because the drugs and alcohol weren't the problem. Your way of thinking is the problem," right? Mm-hmm. And at first that pissed me off, because what she was saying was, it doesn't matter the substance that you're putting in your body. Your way of thinking is the problem. All that's almost it means nothing. It's your way of thinking that we need to work on, right? Mm. So at first it really concerned me. It really bummed me out. Like, well, if I'm the problem, then there's a lot of work to do, unfortunately. But it opened my eyes into understanding that, when I left that place eventually and I was back out on my own, came home back in the real world, there was some real work to do. There was a lot of very serious work to do in my personal life and my way of thinking. And it, like you just said, Phil, it's been a tough road. It's been a really tough road so far, but I'm able to handle things and comprehend them easier now. Things are they're easier to understand. And my mind is not clouded with any drugs or alcohol. So that all being said, I would like to pass it to Laura.
Well, I feel like you jumped to the end here, right? Which is that we are the problem. The substances are basically the same. It's, it's changing how we're feeling, how we're thinking, and those are the parts of ourselves that we need to work on. Going back to the beginning of my story, at least, or of my recovery story, when I was in my counseling session that I was directed to through the employee assistance program, and I'm telling my story, and the counselor says, like, you need to go to treatment probably now. After fighting that, I left there and told everyone, and then went to rehab and told my counselor at rehab, I'm just here for the drugs. Like, I'm here so I can stop using cocaine and Percocet. Like, I get it. These things are bad.
But don't look over here.
Look over here.
Yeah.
And not just I get it. These things are bad. I mean, I was miserable and depressed, and
sure.
I needed to stop.
Right.
I'm making light of it. But I really didn't think that I needed to stop drinking. I knew I drank a lot. I was a heavy drinker. Drinking led to other problems. Like, once I started, I couldn't stop. I made terrible decisions. I mean, all the things now, like, clearly I was an alcoholic. But I had, for a very long time, put up some kind of shield around my drinking. Like,
you compartmentalized it.
I did, but I also, like, I said to the counselor, for example, like, just give me a chance. Like, I never even tried to stop. And the reason I never tried to stop, quote unquote, was because I told myself that, like, I liked the way that I was drinking. Like, I was just like, I'm proud that I drink a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I can drink with the guys, or like in my professional life, like, I'm the one who can hang. And,
yes.
Like, I continued to push the line with my drinking in a way that I acted like was okay, even though I knew that it wasn't.
Sure.
Right? And it's easier to do that, I think, with alcohol because of the way, just as a society, we view
absolutely
alcohol and drinking, mm-hmm. right? Like, it's not that weird if I wake up in the morning, I'm like, let's get brunch and get wasted at brunch. Or, if I wake up in the morning and I make a joke about the fact, like, I need Jameson in my coffee. I need Bailey's in my coffee. Doesn't everybody? Like, come on. But you can say shit like that and people are like, yeah, that's fine. I totally get it.
Yeah, if you don't feel good, let's have more.
Exactly.
Let's get better then.
It would sound a little worse if you were like, let's do 2 shots in the bathroom real quick before we get started with our day.
Yeah. Let me grab my liquor bottle out of the ceiling over here real quick and drink in my bedroom alone. Yeah. It's socially acceptable. That's plain fact of the matter, yeah.
I never got to spread my alcoholic wings the way that I would have liked to. I'll be honest with you. My father, who's an alcoholic, who was sober for pretty much my whole life. He likes to say he took a 2-year vacation. But because he was obviously living with us, or I was living with him, whichever way you want to look at it, there was no alcohol in the house. You know what I mean? Yeah. So alcohol, as far as me drinking, was always very kind of rare, right? Pot was great. I could just spray a couple shots of cologne, and I thought that was, that was it.
Sure.
That was the answer. And then once I got older, I found other things that I thought were the answer. But either way, I mean, it really, I like the point you made. It doesn't matter what it is. And ultimately, AA, NA, OA, all the A's, it doesn't really matter. It's just a word. You know what I mean? And that our problem is 100% us rather than what we're using to solve the us problem, right? But yeah, man, I probably could have done some good drinking. Damn.
Well, so let me touch on something real quick. So my thing was drugs, man. Like, I'm a drug addict through and through. Like, that's just how my brain works, right? It's so much so. And I know, and here's how I know that alcohol isn't enough for me. So if I ever, let's say I were to go back out and be like, I could have a couple drinks, that's not my problem, which is what happened to me in my early 20s. I know that it's not the case because the very day that I tried meth for the first time was the day I stopped drinking.
Yeah.
I have not, and this is not a joke, right. Dude, I have not had a sip of alcohol at all since the very first day I tried meth. Period. It's been like 7 or 8 years, right? Yeah. So this is how I know that my mind, the dopamine that I get, the dopamine release that I get from drinking alcohol is simply not enough. It's not enough. I need something more. So the second I go out and I have a drink or two with some friends, sure, I'm all right temporarily. For right now, I'm okay, right? That's enough for now. And then eventually it's like, let's go out tomorrow. Let's go out the next day. Let's do this. Let's do that. Then before I know it, I'm like, we should get some blow. Next thing I know, it's like, blow doesn't last long enough. Let's get some meth because that's what I want. That's like, it does not matter what the substance is ultimately. But I can tell you this. I do know that alcohol is simply, it's not enough for me. Yeah. I need something more. And it will, for me personally, it will always lead back to something else. That's simply the way that it works.
Yeah, you know? I was when I had 2 years sober at a certain point, and it was actually right before my wife and I started dating. So before we were any kind of a couple. That's an interesting story too, but that's for another podcast. I had 2 years sober. I just celebrated. My parents were there. Everybody was thrilled and happy and all this other good stuff. And I was the model AA citizen, right? And somewhere in us starting to date, she invited me to go on a trip with her and her family to Cuba. And my alcoholic mind started playing tricks on me. At first I was like, no, these are all bad ideas, Phil, bad ideas. But for some reason, one of them stuck. And eventually I went back out. But it was very well thought out. Now, this is how alcoholism and drug addiction, because once I shut the alcoholism down and I just stuck to drugs, I was a pretty good drug addict. You know what I mean? Especially those last few years, there was very little alcohol consumption.
Solid drug addict.
Yeah, real solid, you know? But what wound up happening is I said, well, I used to smoke PCP too. That was a real fun experiment.
Well, that's just too much, Phil.
Well, that's what you want. That's a straight shot to the creator there. Yeah. But what wound up happening was I got a DUI because of that, and then I was sober for those 2 years. So my mind told me basically, I'm not going to do drugs. Drugs are bad, right? Drugs are obviously, that was the issue. But this alcohol thing, like, nothing bad really ever happened from alcohol. You just don't go overboard, you know? Like, it's so insane that, like, Simple. 2 years of sobriety and everything and just being in the middle of it, and then how can your brain go back to something like that, you know? And eventually what wound up happening is with that first sip of wine, which I don't drink wine, but proving to myself, I knew it was a bad idea. I knew it wasn't going to work. It took probably a year and a half before that thought of, like, this isn't really what I want. It's not doing it for me anymore. You know what I mean? It's just not. And I was just waiting for the opportunity to present itself. And I managed the bar at the time too, which is an interesting story. But eventually it presented itself.
Sure.
And all bets were off. You know, once I think it was, I don't even know if it was fentanyl or if it was Percocet or whatever the hell it was. But one of those lovely opiates that we like so much. Once that came down, I mean, it all came down with it. You know, it was just a very short series of hard sprees and bye-bye, you know?
For that year and a half when you were just drinking, were you still in the program?
No.
No.
I knew when I made the decision, right? Because I'm a smart alcoholic. I'm not one of these dummies that are just gonna go.
We're all pretty smart.
Yeah. I'm not one of these crazy people that just go on a run. Right? That's what I told myself. I'm not just gonna run to the bar. I sat my mother down in tears, mind you, and told her that I think I'm gonna take a step back from AA. Right? That's the picture that I painted. It's not I don't want to drink. I really genuinely, in my heart of hearts, said it was not about that. And and same thing with my father, same thing with my sponsor. Nobody said it was a good idea. Nobody was like, yeah, Phil, test the waters, you know?
Yeah.
But I did anyway. And honestly, I didn't drink for like 2 weeks. I'm like, well, look at this. Everything. Look at this. Nothing bad's happening. This is great. And once again, my lovely alcoholic father, who then was probably sober for like 10 years, said, you're going to have to drink, right?
Yeah.
Like, this experiment needs that portion of it. Like, you have to. And I'm like, you piece of shit. How could
So wait, hold on. Let me get this straight.
Yeah.
So you said, I'm going to go back out.
He announced.
Yeah, I'm going to go back out. And then
everyone.
you didn't go back out. And you were just like, look.
Well, I said I was, like, I knew I was going to go back out, but nobody else, like, I didn't paint the picture that it was about the drinking. I knew I was going to because I was going to Cuba with my new girlfriend.
That's so funny,
I didn't
dude.
Oh, my mind, dude. If anybody could get in there, I'd be. Oh, it's just really bad.
It's a circus. It's always a circus.
Yeah, but you know what? My dad was right. I had to test the experiment. And the thing is, I think it's like I'm so hard-headed and stubborn that I didn't drink the way that I wanted to for so long.
Yeah, sure.
Because the first sip of wine, whatever it was, it didn't matter. I knew I wanted the whole bottle. But like, let's just have this glass, put it down, and say nothing happened, you know? It's
And that's how we know
something.
that we're alcoholic, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other people don't have to do that.
No.
Right.
They don't have to say to themselves,
No.
I'm just going to have one glass so everybody thinks everything's okay.
Yeah.
It's not how normal people operate,
One of
I'm told.
One of the best lines I've ever heard is people who aren't alcoholic just simply don't ever think about their drinking.
Yeah.
They just don't.
That's a fair assessment. It's a fair assessment.
And I'm like, that's all I do. That's, especially when I'm drinking, that's all I do.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
So I want to mention something real quick. So I read a book when I was in rehab. And I want to make it very clear that this is my own personal understanding of alcoholism and drug addiction, right? Not one versus the other in my own mind. I read this book called Understanding Addiction. This book was written by two doctors. I think I may have mentioned this in one of our earlier episodes. If I didn't, please excuse me. But
you mentioned it today.
I did
when I was speaking
earlier.
Yeah.
So the thing about this book, it's a real simple read, and it's written by two doctors who lost their practices because of their addictions, right? But both were able to regain their practice, their medical practice, post recovery, right? Or in not post recovery, but in recovery, post getting sober, clean and sober. They talk about in addicts or alcoholics' brain chemistry as having a faulty braking system for dopamine release, right? Mm-hmm. And when I read this and I started to comprehend this and mull it over in my own mind, it started to make sense to me. In my own mind, if you are truly an addict or alcoholic, by definition, right, by the medical definition, right, if you are an addict, you are also an alcoholic in any sense, because if you are an addict, if you are an alcoholic, your brain releases dopamine at an unregulated rate once it's put into your system, right? That's the way it was explained in this book. So that's the way I started to comprehend this. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense to me, okay? Once I put this substance into my body, my brain floods with dopamine and it unleashes the phenomenon of craving. Mm-hmm. That's how that works, right? And then it was explained to me in the doctor's opinion in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started to understand the way my brain works. And it's not just drugs or alcohol. It's sex, it's sweets, it's anything that releases dopamine. Now, mind you, meth is pretty much the highest dopamine that release that you can have, right? As Rick said earlier, it's 11 times, and that like blows anything else out of the water, right? So it's no surprise that that's the drug that I love the most, you know, because my brain, the second I put something into my body that releases dopamine, it's just all bets are off, man. So it was explained to me that if if you are truly, now mind you, there are plenty of people out there who have used drugs for an extended amount of time who are not technically an addict or alcoholic, right? And likewise, there's people out there who are daily drinkers who are not alcoholics, right? But if you are truly, by definition, one of the two, then you are also the other. Because alcoholic just means alcohol addict. That's what that is.
Yeah.
So that's my own personal understanding of it.
That makes sense. I think I always say these to the guys over at the jail when I go to speak there, that I have to look at it, my point of view of it is it's like a disease. It's like anything else. You know what I mean? And either you have it or you don't.
Sure.
It doesn't matter how it manifests itself. I got it. You know what I mean? And that's the hardest part for, at least it was the hardest part for me to just accept the fact that
I was just about to say
that I have this thing, you know? Because once I have it, then first and foremost, I can do something about it. If I never have it, or at least I never say that I do, right? The evidence can show whatever it wants. But if I never say that I do, then I can't do anything about it.
Right.
You know? But I think 100% that's definitely, I agree though. One way or the other, if you're one, you're probably the other. I don't really see it being possible for me to only be an alcoholic, and just the drugs that make me feel 10 times better, I don't like them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I wanted you to expand on something really quick.
Yeah.
Because I've heard you speak about it before. The time period between when you realized that you were an alcoholic and the time period when you finally accepted that you were an alcoholic.
Long, like 11 years, right? It's really crazy, man. So like the first time that I came into AA, of course it was because of my father. He, 2 DUIs, and they kind of drag you over here. And I was in no way, shape, or form did I want to be there or have too much to do with it. I thought it was all the things that you think in the beginning and you don't want to be there, right? It was corny. This is a freaking cult. This is just like, what are these old guys doing here every single day? Like, it's just everything, everything.
I'm too smart for this. I'm too cool for this.
God, yes. Yeah. What? Just 100% yes to everything you can possibly think. That's what I was thinking. And, but when they spoke, right, and God forbid they would open the book, it was just all truth, right? And I remember somebody took me through the steps like within like 4 hours. It was insanity. It made no sense, but I know why he did it now, right? He's like, just shove it into him as much as you can. It doesn't matter if it sticks, just maybe something will. And that was the beginning, right? And I knew that, unfortunately, that I belonged there. Like, I knew that what they were talking about, they weren't lying. I feel the same way. I get it. But definitely, like, so I knew that I was an alcoholic, and I also knew that I just plain and simple drank differently than everybody else did. There's a reason that, everybody's kind of falling asleep, winding down, and I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? You know what I mean? Like,
still hunting for more.
Yeah, something, That's usually when the drug bone kicks on, like ultra high. And there's, the evidence is insurmountable, honestly. There's a lot. So I knew I was an alcoholic back then. That was probably like, 19, 20, somewhere in there. Accepting that I was an alcoholic, right? So there were like 10 years of just trying to prove that I was not, right?
Sure.
And it's really crazy because when I look at it now at 33, all that time I was doing just that, right? Like, I was going through the motions of life, of like work and girlfriend and school, even some points, and like job, and it just everything. Like, it's like I was sprinkling a little bit of life around, but like I was just living for this one thing and trying to prove that this one thing was the right thing to live for, right? I don't see it at the time when I'm in it.
Sure.
Which is the hardest part about this, which is why I need you guys and everybody now, right? Because I don't see the craziness that I come up with. You can see it really good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I have had people tell me multiple times, like, hey, when's the last time you were at a meeting? You know what I mean? Or when's the last time whatever, right? It's always easier to be called out. So, but the moment that I knew that I was an alcoholic and the game was kind of over, was the first day I got sober. I mean, hunched over lightly, my mother-in-law's bathroom sink. My then fiance walked in on me, and something just kind of broke. I don't really know what it was. I always say, like, there's that definition of insanity, that doing the same thing over and over, expecting something different, and then there's I like to call it the alcoholic insanity, is knowing exactly that it's not going to be different and doing it over and over and over, you know?
That's the mental blind spot.
Yeah.
That's the mental blind spot.
Yeah.
And it ultimately doesn't matter the substance. If it makes me feel good, I'm gonna keep running it.
100%.
Regardless of whether it destroys my life or my family or my friendships or my body. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna keep running it till it's over.
That was a really weird point for me, because I've never been there before, right? It wasn't that bad. I still had money. I still had this. I still had a lot of
functioning
stuff. Yeah. But that inside feeling of like, damn, man, this is just never gonna work, right? And well, not to mention that I was starting to withdrawal and everything else. It just sucked. So, but the fact that, like, I knew that I had to, I told my fiance at the moment, I was like, everything kind of has to, I don't know if I said it to her verbatim, but she knew what the deal was. Like, I have to leave you here. I have to go back to where I know there's meetings, because it's the beginning of COVID. Everything has to go on pause right now. I don't know if we're going to get married in 4 months, but I know that if I don't do this, we're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That I know for sure.
Yeah, that I know for sure. Exactly. And I did. And it wasn't really a question of what was going to happen. What about the job? What about this? Like, none of that stuff mattered. You know,
Sure.
It just all kind of was like, all right, I'm just going to shut up now, you know, and just go and walk the beaten path, let's say, you know, because I knew you guys had it, you know, I always knew that the answer was here.
Yeah.
It's just, I wasn't ready.
Sure.
You know, what does our friend Paul always say? He doesn't believe in relapse. He just says that, how does he say it? That you're not ready until you're ready.
Yeah, sure.
You know, it's not
Willing.
over until
Willingness.
it's over. Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Willingness.
Until you've had enough. I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
Right. I think what's one of the things that I'm sticking on right now is this idea that, you know, you spent 11 years, right? Like, having known what alcoholism is, having identified with it, trying to fight against it. But really, like, because you had been there, even if it was 11 years ago, even if it was just being around your dad being in Alcoholics Anonymous, you at least could name it, right? And, like, you're really fortunate to have had that in a lot of ways, right?
No, I'm just kidding. No, I think I am. I think it would have taken me a lot longer to even remotely be open to anything if it wasn't for him. Absolutely, yeah.
And it just goes back to this thought that I had at the beginning, and I don't know why I'm stuck on it today, but, like, the way that drinking alcohol is viewed in our society. And if you're not introduced to the idea of what alcoholism is, if you're not around it, if you don't have people who will call you out, if you don't have people who will say, like, why don't you try a meeting, or, you know, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that behavior? Like, you can go for a really long time feeling super shitty and drinking a lot. And if you don't turn to drugs, at least, you know, you can put that aside. Like, well, I'm all right because I'm not doing drugs, right? Like, for everybody listening to the podcast, just because we all did drugs doesn't mean that that's a prerequisite to come into the room.
You do not have to.
You do not have to. But, like, if you're asking yourself, am I drinking too much? If you're asking yourself, why do I keep wanting to drink when other people are done, right? Like, if you're asking any of those kind of questions, like, you might belong here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So for me, again, when I found one drug, when I found meth specifically, I stopped drinking entirely. It was easy for me at that point to compare. So I've always said it would be a lot harder for me if they had, like, billboards for meth. or Super Bowl commercials for meth, right? It would be, you know, everybody's just, like, hanging out in the backyard with their pipe, just, like, smoking some meth.
You walk into the work party, everybody's doing meth.
Yeah,
right?
Everybody's doing rails off the It would be
Christmas morning. Anyone want meth with
Meth
their
brunch.
croissant?
It would be a lot harder for me, right? And I feel for people who are who struggle with alcohol only, right? That's their one thing. They've never turned to anything else. But their drinking got so bad that they had to enter the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous or go to rehab or enter recovery because of it, right? So I feel badly for them because it is so flushed down your, like, right in your face, like all the time. Everywhere you go, everything you see. I can walk into a bar, I could be around 100 people who are just slamming drinks, and it bothers me not at all. Not at all. I don't like the way that alcohol feels. I learned that a long time ago, which brings me back to the point of the second I found meth, I stopped drinking. And I was a daily drinker. Every day when I got home from work, I would polish off a 12-pack every single night, right? Then I found meth. Don't need that anymore. In fact, I don't even need sleep anymore or food or any of it. So, for me, man, I feel for people who struggle with alcohol because it is tough. And if it were if my drug of choice was pushed on me the way that alcohol is pushed on the rest of society, I would have had a much harder time getting and staying sober. Now, I also don't, this is a topic for another time, I don't necessarily believe in triggers. I believe that we need to do our absolute most to be able to let other people live the way that they're going to live and be able to be okay with that and still survive. But at the same time, man, like having it constantly flashed in front of your face, the commercials and the billboards and the everything, it's just in society.
Which is hard after you've decided to get sober. It's also really hard before you get sober because it's so easy to compare yourself, like,
absolutely,
I'm different than the person who drinks out of a paper bag under a bridge, right? I drink a lot, but like, so does this group of people.
So does my coworker. Like, so does my mom. So does my dad. So does my spouse. So does.
So do the people on TV. Like it's normal. Like you come home from work and you want to slam a bottle of wine. That's what the cool kids do.
That's how people cope. It's in all the movies. That's how people cope.
Right.
That, and look,
it's not how people should cope. It is not okay that if you feel stressed or lonely, that your only thing to do at that point is to go and drink a bottle of wine.
Right. But people will laugh about it. There are literal laugh tracks on sitcoms for people who just, that's how they cope. They come home from work, they have a bad day, and they crack a bottle of wine and polish it off, and that's hilarious.
Right.
But it's just like, on the television. In my life, how it actually looks is a lot of tears. A lot of brokenness inside of me. Because again, it does not matter the drug of choice. It does not matter whether it's alcohol or drugs. That coping mechanism inside of me, back in my active addiction, it looked like a lot of brokenness, a lot of pain, a lot of loneliness, a lot of not understanding how to cope with life. It primarily manifested itself with me sitting in my garage by myself, getting high until I didn't have to feel anymore. So again, it didn't matter but back when I was drinking, same idea, man. Same exact idea. I was unhappy in the relationship I was in. I was unhappy with my job. I was unhappy with my life. So I drank, right? And I drank and I drank and I drank until I found something better. And then I did that full time. It didn't matter what it was. I always had a real issue coping, Go ahead.
You know what? A lot of people, while you guys are talking about this, it just kind of clicked with me. A lot of people, especially in the beginning when they're first coming in, it's, well, then, like, how is this going to work? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because, okay, yes, I want to stop drinking. It's definitely a problem in my life. What are these events going to look like, right? And this may seem like a shock to some people, because I know it was for me, but did you know that, like, happy hour was meant to go to a bar, right, or a place, and have a few drinks and speak about work and like blow off some steam.
You are
right?
kidding me.
Talk about the boss, maybe some real digs, but that was it.
Yeah.
Like everybody, there's a reason happy hour is from like 5 to 7, because people have like kids and lives and everything. Like I had no
happy
clue.
Hours.
Yeah.
And
it's
hours.
Not happy
but what
night.
do you do at 7 other than continue to drink? I don't understand.
It's only 7.
I've never stopped at 7, so I can't tell you. But like that blew my mind. Like when somebody said, like, did you know that like a birthday party was like to go celebrate someone's birthday? Like it really, same thing with New Year's or
Sure.
Christmas or any of this stuff. It seems so logical, and like now that I say it, yeah, duh. But no, like it was never what was the party and who's gonna be there. It was always only what's gonna be there, and is there enough? Because if not, well, I can make
I'll
some
bring
phone
some.
calls.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure there's enough. And there's always this moment, right? The first couple times, there's a guy that's locked up right now. I forget what the heck his name is, but whatever. He's going to a wedding 3 days after he leaves. He finishes his sentence or whatever, and all the same questions that we're talking about right now. What am I gonna do? How am I gonna? I'm like, there's this moment. Like, go be at the wedding, celebrate the people that are getting married.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not the alcohol and all this other stuff, right? But there's always this moment at the night that I used to wait for, right? Because that was my, finally all you crazy bastards are just like me.
Yes.
All the time, right? And everybody's the same way. I used to thrive in that. And it's usually towards the end of the night when everybody's about to take it down and there's like this 15-minute, 30-minute window of just belligerent, drunken jokes and craziness, and that's what I wait for. That now is the moment that I leave.
Yeah.
Right? That, plain and simple. Everything up until that point is fine.
Good for
As
you.
long as
I
can
leave far
still-
before that point is
Yeah.
reached.
Yeah, I don't have an option.
Yeah.
My wife is Haitian. She has a huge family. I'm
Sure.
Polish. I have a huge family. Everybody's drinking all the time. So, but I can still have conversations with people, even if they're drinking, or I can have, and talk about life and things and like real grown-up stuff. You know what I mean? And everything is great and it's fun and it's light and it's weird. First of all, all this stuff is very weird when I get sober. It's nothing comfortable about it, but you get used to it. Just like it was completely abnormal to do drugs for me for a while or to drink the way that I was doing, but eventually that got normal. And now it's like switching the tape back. You know what I mean?
I had so many of those realizations, including that there are groups of people at events like this who are just having great conversations and enjoying each other's company. Even if I was in those moments, like at a wedding, right? I would either identify the other people who drank like me and just stick with them all night. Or, and the part that I regret the most, I do think I was really a pusher, right? Like, because I wanted everybody to be at the same level as me. I thought I was fun. I thought I was like dishing out a good time by being the one who's like suggesting shots or, encouraging somebody to drink faster. But like, how disgusting. Like, and it took me a little while to realize that. And that included going out with some of those same friends and realizing like how they drank when I wasn't there, like pushing it. Like, how selfish.
Yeah,
I was just
true.
so focused on having a great time. And I wanted everybody else not to have a great time with me. I wanted them to make me not feel bad about like drinking the most.
Let's add to the fourth step, why don't we? Thank you, Laura. Now I have more stuff to think about.
More people to make amends to.
Yeah. That's so fun. I got plenty more resentments on the way. Thanks a lot.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you just hashed up a whole can of worms. So I'm gonna tie things up here because we're running out of time. I want to thank you, Phil, for coming today.
Thank you guys.
I've really been going through the ringer the last couple weeks, and one thing that's really been helping me is leaning in heavily to you guys and my support group. Right. I'm truly blessed. I'm truly blessed with a great group of friends that I get to do awesome stuff like this with, right? I do not know. I was having a conversation with my mom this morning, and this is just some real talk real quick. I was having a conversation with my mom this morning, and I explained to her, and I hope that this concept can make sense. This morning when I woke up, I thought, this is a lot harder than I expected it to be, what I'm going through right now. But it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be too. It's the hardest thing I've gone through yet. But the fact that I'm set up with the support system that I have and the knowledge and the tools that I have now, it makes it better. And I'm able to keep moving forward without this just knocking me down, right? So that being said, I love this topic that we talked about today because that was my mindset. That was a lot of other people's mindset. I struggled with this, not that. I struggled with that, not this. And ultimately for me, I can only speak for myself, right? It all landed back in the same place. It landed in a jail cell and it landed in rehab. That's where it culminated. That's how it manifested itself. That's where the progression of my disease. It started with one drink when I was like 14 years old. It ended with the police blowing out my front door. You know.
Or for me and Phil, right? Like a deep emotional despair, right? That you just can't ignore.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
That too. Yeah. I mean, it was, like I said, man, there have been, and that's the thing too. It's not just before we got clean and sober. It's been after I've got clean and sober too. There have been a lot of tears shed. There's been a lot of struggle, right? Now I have the tools to be able to get through it rather than try to like skirt around it constantly. And that's really the blessing of recovery. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of No Crosstalk. This podcast, it's for you. It's for the people in early sobriety or the people who are just considering it, who are dipping their toes in the water, who are thinking maybe this is for them, really struggling right now. Those of you who are just in the throes of despair right now and just trying to figure out what's next. And I can assure you that things don't always get easier, but they do get better as time goes on. If you show up for yourself and you build yourself a nice support system, a big safety net, and you work hard for this, it's possible for anyone. So again, Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We hope you guys have a fantastic weekend this weekend. Enjoy. Thanks so much. Bye.
See ya.